For those of you in the class, we're getting there. Did want to put in a little plug. Today we're going to be doing something a little different for this quarter, which is a panel, which is very exciting. And if you like that, I will say, if you want to, you can sign up again. You can take this class many times. Next quarter, we will have, and Kate Darby will be managing it, and her intention is to have mostly, if not entirely, panels. She's arranged half of those now, but if you have ideas for big panels, you could talk to me or Kate directly for getting one of those organized for next quarter. So that'll be interesting. So today, this panel idea is very exciting. Cindy, who's been helping arrange it, is home with a sick kid, so I'm sorry she's missing it, but welcome. We have Todd Woodard, who is the Infrastructure and Resources Director for the Samish Nation. Is that close enough? Close enough. All right. Well, I'm going to hand off to Todd and let them explain what's going on and who else we've got here today. And I'll keep handing around the mic.
It's Squile CM Nischalicha, Todd Woodard Senesnat, Chayetson it's a Swiss Samishson, Chayetson it's a Lentikswitz, Shichatung Quint Atlung, Qualquasan Wanedum Ken. So good afternoon, honored colleagues, friends, relations. My name is Todd Woodard. As mentioned, I work for the Samish Indian Nation. Specifically tonight, I'm here representing the house that watches over all the territory, which is the name given to our Natural Resources Department. And then the last thing I said is I will continue on in English now because I've virtually exhausted all of my straight Salish at this point. So thank you for coming and thank you for reaching out and inviting us. Tonight, I'm really excited to bring a group of highly talented folks, including a Western alumni, to the table here to talk about some of the natural resources work they do, and more importantly, how that's linked to Samish DNR's mission statement, which is to protect, enhance, and restore all culturally relative species and their habitats for current and future generations. So, big lift, and we realize that, but it means we have quite a variety of work. We wouldn't be able to cover all of it tonight. So specifically tonight, we're going to be talking about some of the cultural burning and prairie restoration and Gary Oak restoration work we're doing. And then we've got members from our dive team here to talk about some of our projects under the water now. And so all the way to my right is Elena, Andrew, Calvin, and Scott. So for those of you that, I'm sure folks in this area are fairly familiar with Samish, but one of the first slides on the rotating dealie up there was a map of Samish territory. Essentially, we're talking the San Juan Archipelago with winter villages on the eastern part of that, so Guaymas Island, Lummi Island, Anacortes area, and then summer camps throughout. And I would definitely be remiss if I didn't add that this place was utilized by many Coast Salish cultures, Lummi Nooksack included, First Nations, Songhees and Saanich from Vancouver Island. And one of the reasons I think that this area was so shared and utilized was because of the abundance of natural resources. Let's face it, you don't have to defend a huge territory if it's really easy to go feed your family, right? And so there was a lot of cultures that utilized this area, and there's a deep connection to this place and to the natural resources within it. Many Coast Salish people refer to themselves as salmon people. I've heard Coast Salish people say that if the salmon disappear, so do their people. So it's that connection. And there's a very common phrase, when the tide is out, the table is set. And I think that's a really good one that just sort of indicates that connection to the natural world. So the big part of our mission statement is that it's culture that guides our work. If we can't link it to the perpetuation of tradition and cultural tradition at Samish, we generally don't get involved. Luckily, the field is still wide open. So again, we've got a ton of projects that we work on, and we're going to focus in on 2 of those, and hopefully by the end of this panel, you'll sort of understand how we link that work to that cultural aspect and that cultural guide for the people that we work for. If not, please sign up for the next class and you'll see how panel presentations are actually supposed to be done. There's a little bit of an experiment for us, so we appreciate the chance to involve you in it. So I'm going to start with some of our terrestrial work with Elena and Andrew. And Elena, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got in this line of work, what draws you to this work that we do. Oh, I'll hand this to you.
Thanks, Todd.
The mic is working as it's supposed to for the house sound, so speak up. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Elena, and I am from the East Coast. So I am not Samish. I'm not a Samish citizen, and I also don't belong to any Coast Salish tribes. I'm just lucky to get to work as a set of hands to help perpetuate and save some of the aspects of the culture that the tribe deems appropriate. Um, I got into this line of work. Well, I studied engineering in college. So, honestly, for those of you that are studying environmental stuff right now, I'm a bit jealous because it took me a while and some years in corporate America to realize that I wanted to work with my hands. Um, and then also, of course, there's computer work when it comes to environmental stuff too. So, I get my fair share of that. But yeah, basically, after realizing that I wanted to kind of work in the environmental space, I joined the WCC, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, and that kind of got me linked up with a whole ton of different organizations. So specifically what I do at Samish, I'm a natural resources technician, and I do two things. One, we'll talk about in a second, the prairie stuff, and the other is marine debris. I'm super into picking up our trash, looking into the waste problem that exists here. And when you can combine that with adventure and being on the water, like that's where I want to be. So, yeah, I just think tending to our waste is one of the most humble things we can do as humans, and it helps protect the resources that specifically the Samish wants to be helping and saving.
Same question to you, Andrew. Who are you?
Hey guys, I am Andrew Delaney, and I am also a natural resources technician, and I am from Tennessee originally. I studied environmental science in the University of Tennessee, and I really kind of had no idea what I wanted to do, but I've always been passionate about the environment and being outdoors. I worked for a little bit for a water conservation nonprofit over there in Tennessee, and I just kind of always wanted to move out to the West. I applied to like 200 jobs one summer, and I got lucky enough to get one at Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. It was just a little seasonal gig, um, but that led to one thing, led to another, and eventually I got hired onto the Samish crew. And I do a lot of different things at Samish DNR. I am also one of the scuba divers, but I really do love my terrestrial projects that I get to work on. Obviously, the prairie work and the burn work that we do is very near and dear to my heart. But I also love to work on amphibian projects. I lead one of the conservation projects for Oregon spotted frogs, which are an endangered species of frog out in the Pacific coast, and yeah, a variety of other things. But yeah.
And Elena, can you give us a brief overview of the Prairie Restoration Program and how fire is and was used in prairies?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's get into the prairie stuff a little bit. So, first I'll just talk a little bit about what a prairie or a prairie bald is. And honestly, you guys might know already, but basically, these balds exist or existed all over kind of Western Washington. And basically, it's a rocky, steep, open area that was tended to by lots of different Coast Salish people. And basically, it served as a garden, a food garden. So, what you would see there, kind of all of these different food species and medicine species surrounded by a central tree, which is the Gary oak. Kind of as settlers moved in, and agriculture took over, grazing started to happen. A lot of these areas have closed. So I think there's only, what, 10%? Somewhere around 10% of these habitats still in existence over here in Western Washington, which is sad, especially because it was such like an active part of specifically Samish culture. So these gardens, these prairie balds were owned by families and they were passed down matrilineally from grandmother to mother to daughter. And there was kind of a whole cycle of traditional stewardship. So they would start by making sure the land was open and these sun-loving species could get, enough sun and rain when it came. And then they would go and harvest and enjoy their crops, specifically camas. And then at the end of that, they would set it all ablaze and burn it. And actually, that burning would help then the next season help the species come back and do it even better. So at Samish, we've been trying to kind of bring back some of those practices and help save some of these landscapes.
Anything you want to add to that, Andrew? Or?
Yeah, so these habitats require human intervention, and they have since time immemorial. So we can look at the historical fire records of different islands in the region, and there are a couple studies around Waldron Island that show the historical fire regime 200 years ago was around 7 years. So you're seeing habitats going through that full cycle every 7 years. And then what's happened in the past 150 years since settlers came has been basically a complete erasure of those historical fire regimes. And that allows all these conifers to encroach in these habitats. And that's one of the reasons why we don't really have prairie balds anymore or prairie ecosystems. And another reason is just that those areas tend to be the prettiest spot in the area, and it's the prime location for development, whether that be agriculture or building homes or neighborhoods, things like that. And that is particularly an issue in the San Juan Islands. A lot of those habitats were converted to sheep farms and things like that. But yeah, if we can bring back cultural burning and we can restore planting of important first foods and first medicines, then we can have citizens in the future come to these places that we get to burn independently, and we can do it with them, and they can harvest from the places that their ancestors did. And that would be the first time they could do that in a very long time.
It's interesting. When we first started this work, we were working on Cypress Island and looking at some of the remnant prairie habitats there. And we were trying to figure out what was the sort of pre-contact border. And so we started coring trees in a line perpendicular to one of the edges. And you'd find 80-year-old tree, 80-year-old tree, 80-year-old tree, 80-year-old tree, 160-year-old tree with fire scarring around the bottom. Okay, now we're probably onto something, right? So some of our earliest efforts were actually working with WCC crews to chainsaw those encroaching trees and reestablish and replant that sort of managed, Coast Salish managed. And we knew that those cypress prairie balls were utilized by Samish from the oral traditions that have come down through elders and been shared with us. A follow-up question for both of you guys. What kind of training, you already did a great job, Andrew, of sort of linking it to the perpetuation of culture, right? Traditional foods, first foods and stuff, but what kind of training is needed? I'm assuming I just can't go out there and, strike a match.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely not. You cannot just light things on fire as you please. So there are a variety of different certifications and training programs you can do. One thing that we did is we went through the state DNR's prescribed burn manager course, and that is offered to anyone in the state. You don't have to be a landowner. You don't have to have experience in it. You can sign up for the course and you learn all about prescribed fire, and you get a certain amount of time to pass an evaluation in field. And in that meantime, if you're looking for experience with prescribed fire, you can reach out to a number of PBAs across the state, which stands for Prescribed Burn Association. They have a number of those around Washington, and the whole purpose is to create a community of people who are into prescribed fire, and they help each other with projects that they want. Because it requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, tools, people, manpower. And so these groups do this kind of thing for free, and they help you out.
So bonus question. If you could, everybody talks about smoke days and climate change, and fire is generally viewed as a negative on the landscape. How do you think we can change that perception through your project?
Um, yeah, that's a tough one. I guess, I mean, since it was used since time forever, like obviously there's a bunch of validity in burning and how it's actually preventative and it's kind of medicine for the soil and the plants and the ecosystems. I think there's just a lot of movement right now on the prescribed fire front. Like it is accelerating prescribed fire is actually helping us reduce huge wildfires. So I think that goes for the San Juan Islands as well, and specifically prairie balds. Like, who doesn't want huge open swaths of biodiverse area that are naturally wildfire barriers too? It's kind of, yeah, it's like a two birds, one stone thing. You get the cultural benefits, the ecological benefits, and yeah, the fire prevention benefits as well.
And one of our partners is Padilla Bay National Estuarine Reserve, and they've been looking at restoring some of what was old pasture grass, to more native prairie. And they're doing prescribed burns, which Elena and Andrew are participating in. And so that's a nice public space to be able to educate people as well. So we're trying to help wherever we can on that. Running down on time for this specific half before we have to shift over here, but do either of you have anything else you'd like to add?
This work that we do requires a lot of partnerships around the region. And one particular partnership I wanted to highlight here is the Island Conservation Corps, based out of the San Juan Islands. We rely on them heavily for a lot of the work we do with the Gary Oak Project. And if any of you were interested in getting into that world, it's a really cool opportunity to look into. I'm not sure how it works now, but historically they have given master's programs through this work. So it's kind of like an analog to WCC, but your credits are going straight to a master's program and you're getting field time experience with fires. You're learning how to run chainsaws. It's a really cool project.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there'll be more questions as we cycle through that section. But now I'm going to turn to my left to Calvin and Scott, and we're going to talk a little bit about our fairly new dive program. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is at Samish and how you got into this work.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Todd. My name's Scott, and I am the Marine Program Supervisor for Samish DNR and the Dive Safety Officer. Currently, I am managing the Scientific Dive Program and the team, overseeing the scuba projects that we do, anything subtitle. I also am a dive team member, so I'm doing the diving. I also operate boats and assist with other field work as needed. A lot of what I do is also very similar to any aquatic biology type of work that one would do: project planning, grant writing, logistics, data analysis, and report writing. I got into this line of work through a fairly long, windy road. I've worked in the Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico, the Oregon coast, Cascade River, or Cascade Mountains and the rivers. And I've done a bunch of different wetland and fisheries related work, and only a smattering of diving over the years until this position. But I have always been a diver and on my own time and through my own explorations, and always recreated on the water and messed around with boats. And I think most importantly, to get me to where I am now is I've stayed curious and followed my nose. Because I do consider this kind of my dream job that I have right now, being able to dive and doing science underwater. So when the opportunity arose, I jumped on it and I've been running with it. So I did have a question. And is anybody in the room, are you divers or have you been scuba diving? Couple folks. Yeah, cool. Okay, so a few of you. I would say that diving in the San Juans and in cold water is not your Caribbean vacation. When you're occupational diving, especially, work has to get done. And the conditions out here, we have big tidal swings, cold water, We have really low visibility. We often have really pleasant days, and we have, 10 times rather unpleasant days. So that being said, we don't dive in unsafe conditions, but we dive in unfavorable conditions through rain and wind and all those things. Scuba is definitely a tool to access a very inhospitable environment. We have no business being underwater. And that's kind of the way that I view it. And it is very challenging. Over all the field work and various biological sampling stuff that I've done, underwater field work is the hardest. And it's that challenge that I think is really appealing to certain people. And that's certainly what I like about it. So, if you're into struggling a little bit and working hard underwater, I would advise looking into it. Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, now that Scott has successfully scared everyone off from this line of work, Calvin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Oh, is that my job?
And why you enjoy doing this?
Okay. Hello, so my name is Calvin Abbott. I'm a graduate of Western's Marine and Coastal Sciences program of, I think, 2023 in December, so not that long ago. And I have been a scientific diver for 13 years since I was a teenager, doing scientific diving that whole time. I've never been on a Caribbean vacation, so I don't have any comparison point, but I love being underwater. It's so much fun to do it. You can do it hundreds of times and you'll always see new animals, new creatures, new behaviors. It's just endlessly fascinating to me to be underwater and to get to do it for work and be putting out animals into the water and be observing what the animals are doing is just a super enjoyable aspect of any job you could have, but especially underwater, in my opinion. It definitely is challenging, and that's part of the fun. I mean, I'm a person that likes puzzles, and the idea of like, how do we move this really heavy rock when we can't like stand and pick it up is always interesting. We're always having to figure out new ways to do things that would seem simple until you realize you have to do it underwater. And yeah, I had a pretty straight route. My dad is a scientific diver and a marine scientist. I've always loved being in the ocean, snorkeling, diving. I came to school, kind of knew what I wanted to do. But that's definitely not necessarily the norm here or in many professions. So if that's not your path, no fears.
And Scott, maybe you can just give sort of just a brief overview of the types of projects that diving is involved in at Samish, and the type of training that's needed to do that. What certifications and stuff are necessary.
Yeah, so I will just start by giving a quick background on our program. We are only a 4-person dive team, relatively small. We're all certified as scientific divers through the American Academy of Underwater Sciences, which is kind of the national standard setting for scientific occupational diving. We currently actually have an interagency agreement with Western Washington University where they are our dive safety oversight, and we internally are actively building our own program right now to operate independently as a member of the AAUS, the American Academy of Underwater Science. So that is something that we're working through right now. In terms of the projects, one of my favorites is Pinto abalone restoration. That is a traditional food source that has been overfished in the 50s, 60s, 70s by recreational divers, and tribes have been eating Pinto abalone and using their shells for decorations for forever, as long as people have been here. And so it's a collaborative project between the State Fish and Wildlife, the Puget Sound Restoration Fund, Seattle Aquarium, and ourselves to bring these snails back to the marine environment. So that's one we're working on, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. Also, if anybody follows kind of West Coast marine ecosystem trends, the sunflower sea star has been essentially wiped out through sea star wasting disease, and we are kind of pursuing a pilot project to potentially do some outplants of the sea stars themselves in collaboration with Friday Harbor Labs. In terms of training, and we do some kelp restoration and kelp monitoring, and Calvin can touch on that a little bit as well. But training for this type of work, obviously you need just a very basic recreational open water scuba certification, which is very attainable. You can get that. There are a few more advanced courses that I find very useful. You can go up through rescue diver, and I think that's valuable. And the sky's the limit with recreational dive training. However, it's really good to get at least up through recreational. For science diving, in the way that we've structured things, you need to get scientific dive training through a member of the American Academy of Underwater Sciences. So whatever institution you happen to be affiliated with will give you that training. And another just piece of advice, if anybody was ever interested in pursuing this line of work, training is nice, but just diving a lot is most critical, and diving a lot in new, interesting places and gaining that experience. We do a lot of task loading underwater, and all the diving that you do has to be completely second nature, and you need to be able to focus on your science. So just getting in the water a lot is kind of the move for dive training.
Thanks, Scott. I'm actually super proud to say that we're imminently submitting our application to AAUS, and once successful, we will be the first sovereign nation to be a full member of that organization in the world. So we're pretty excited to be out on the front edge of that. Calvin, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the kelp side of our dive program.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I've been doing in my life and I'm familiar with is sort of kelp forest ecology and monitoring. So we work with a partner organization, Reef Check, and we go out into the San Juans, into the traditional territory, and go out and see how the plants and animals are out there are doing. We lay out transects, we count all the kelp along there, we count all the invertebrates living on the benthos and the rocks, and we count all the fish swimming in the water columns. And we do that every year in the same places to see trends over time. And I think this is a really cool opportunity because just normal, regular citizens who are trained divers can join Reef Check and become citizen science divers and get practice doing that and get trained on how to do that, which is how I became a scientific diver and kind of started off my path in this career. And then the other kelp forest work that we've been doing recently is, so we're monitoring these kelp forests and we see them start to disappear. And what's that next step? So we've been recently getting into restoration. And by recently, I mean like last Monday before last, very recently. We went out with a huge barge and we dropped 400-pound cement pyramids onto the seafloor. And we went down there and we're wrapping them with baby kelp that's been seeded to lines and hoping that we can bring kelp back to some of these areas that have seen it disappear.
Which is, again, the first kelp restoration outplanting in the San Juan Islands. So, yeah, these guys are with our partners are really blazing some really interesting new ground. Okay, in 1 minute or less, how do you guys relate this work to the perpetuation of Samish culture?
I mean, I see this as a way to protect and bring back food sources that are culturally important. You can't perform certain cultural practices and rituals if you don't have the animals and plants that make up the core of those beliefs. And also just this ecosystem was one and the same with the people that lived here. And so protecting it and bringing it back where it's disappeared is really important to preserve that.
Yeah, agreed. And as like a non-tribal citizen and kind of an outsider to Samish culture, I tend to fall onto tribal government directives, strategic plans, and direct citizen input. Like for myself, I try to operate out of a place of humility and honor, for the people and the government that we serve. And the dive program is sort of a specialized and technical tool to accomplish some of the tasks that the tribe is interested in getting completed.
Yeah, and just for some additional background, the kelp leaves or fronds used to be utilized to wrap salmon in to cook traditionally. And we originally got into kelp work because we were hearing from elders that they were having trouble finding those fronds easily to do that food preparation. In addition, the floats or the bulbs used to be used to carry eulachon oil, which is from candlefish, so utilized as a heat source, a light source. And the bulbs would also be dried with small rocks in them, and it would be kids' first rattles. So you could argue that kelp is sort of a foundational introduction to song, ceremony, and culture, before they were able to carve their own cedar rattles. And for any of you that have ever been to Rosario Park in the Bowman Bay area, the Maiden of Deception Pass story pole, notice I did not say totem pole, this is a story pole, is a really foundational story to Samish history. And I hesitated when I said story because as you open yourself up to other ways of knowing, I know people today who trace their lineage back to Kwakwalawut, the Maiden of Deception Pass. Okay, so it's not a fable, it's not a story, it's history to the people that we work for. But Samish Cultural Department recently worked with the state park to update and redo all the signage that tells that story. So if you have a chance and haven't seen it, it's a great one. Okay, bonus question, and then we'll go to Q&A. So what has working for Samish Nation meant to you personally? 30 seconds.
I think the coolest thing about working here is that in many other jobs, you do the same kind of work in many places. And in this job, we kind of do everything in this one place. We look at all the kinds of animals on land and underwater and on top of the water and in the sky. And that's just been super cool. We've gotten to learn so many different things that I didn't know before. So that's been really special.
Yeah, the diversity of the work is really keeps the day-to-day super interesting, as Calvin mentioned. I find it just to be a phenomenal honor to work for and with the original stewards of the land. And selfishly, my conservation and restoration priorities personally overlap with the mission of the Department of Natural Resources. So that works out really nicely.
Yeah, I would echo what both of them said. I really love the diversity of the work. It's an amazing thing to have. But also, I really enjoy all of the lessons I get to learn from Samish citizens, whether it's at a protocol during a formal event, or if we ever happen upon a citizen out in day-to-day life around Anacortes, getting to learn stories from elders, getting to see traditional ceremonies. It's just really cool. It helps tie everything together. It helps make the work make more sense. You get to understand that there's a lot more than just protecting the environment. It's a way of life, and it's protecting resources for 7 generations ahead. So yeah, I've loved to have the honor to learn that.
Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to add. You guys crushed that. Yeah, I'm speechless. You guys had really great answers. Similarly, I mean, hearing the stories of this place since time forever, like really brings everything to light. And yeah, it just makes the work feel important when it's guided by people who know the place so well. So it is an honor.
And I am starting my 19th year working for the Samish Indian Nation. I started as a field technician, and now, at an executive director level, overseeing several departments, and on the more strategic side. And for me, when I have a prior career in executive recruiting, retail management, sales, and I have an undergrad in anthropology where I focused on Native American culture with a minor in biology. So why a 12-year, detour into the business world? I'm not sure, but that circuitous path led me here and eventually to Samish. And for me, it's been an alignment of my own personal interests, working for a community that truly values the work that we do. And our tribal council is extremely supportive. We hear those benefits, all the time. And yeah, I echo everything these guys have said. I've been treated better working for Samish than any of those other prior careers. And it's why they'll drag me out of there. Even if the grant funding's gone, I'm still not leaving. So I think we're right at about hook time for 5 after. So I think we'll maybe pause there. Yeah, let's move into where you guys want the conversation to go, because that's always more interesting to me. Crickets. So for those online, the question is, have the divers ever experienced the bends or run out of oxygen or had any sort of emergency that they've had to deal with at Samish or elsewhere, I guess?
No, I don't, neither of us have experienced that, I don't think. Those are both, very rare situations that generally only occur if you're sort of exceeding what you've planned to dive. The like motto of most divers is plan the dive the plan. And so by, keeping track of your air and planning how long you're going to be underwater, you can pretty safely sort of keep those risks to a minimum. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would add that science diving has a really, really good safety record, and we have no excuse not to follow very strict safety and training protocols. And so we do that and we avoid those situations. We also train for their eventuality, however.
Yeah, I would just add, sorry, just like statistically, science diving has half as many incidents as recreational diving and a fifth as many incidents as commercial diving. So of the fields of diving, it is by far the safest.
How do you remember all that data? That's great. I would say just, I don't dive, but I am one of the folks that's authorized to dive tend, so operate the boats where we're deploying divers and then safely retrieving them. And the one thing I will say is that the amount of safety planning and the safety first mentality that goes into prior to every dive is amazing for these guys. And it's all done before we even hit the dock to go out. Okay. So the plan is in place. The currents have been checked. Everybody's in agreement. Anybody who has any concerns, they've been voiced and worked through, or the plan has changed. And then on the way out, it's amazing with, when our divers are working with reef check volunteers all the way out, it's everybody's laughing, getting to know each other. Man, we hit the site and it's like someone hits a switch. And it's literally, Todd, stop talking to us. We are busy now checking each other's gear and making sure the dive is going to go safe. And I sheepishly go into the boat cabin and let them do their thing. And it is amazing to see. Every diver I've ever encountered, and our crew in particular, our culture at Samish DNR has always been, we go at the level of the person who's least comfortable. We plan for as many contingencies as we can possibly think of. And I think, these guys exhibit that safety first protocol at all times. And in the back. Sure. The question for those online is, folks voiced their impressions and how we're influenced by Samish culture and how often does that happen. I think it's different from community to community. I worked at Upper Skagit for 4.5 years prior to coming to Samish, and I did have opportunities there as well. I will say Samish views themselves as part of the Anacortes community, and the more that everybody gets to know each other, the more integral part of that community we can be. So Samish is very open with sharing their culture, not just with staff, but with people in the community as well. And opportunities like, we host canoe landing every year during tribal journeys. That's open to the public. You can come. Great if you want to volunteer. We always need the help. But then you're welcome to stay for the protocol and the songs and dance and learn about the traditions that go into that. It's sort of an all are welcome. There's another phrase that I heard early on. If you heard about it, you're invited. And if you're there, you're supposed to be. So I have found Samish to be extremely open. The thing that I will say is that relationships with Indigenous people, because of the history, are built at the speed of trust. So going to an Indigenous community and saying, who can I talk to that'll tell me all their stories? That's a horrible approach. I'm just going to warn you about that right now. You'd be like, wait, who are you? What are you going to do with that information? But you get to know people, and as you get to know people, that relationship forms. And then, I've got relationships with knowledge keepers and elders where they're comfortable answering my questions. They're also comfortable telling me that's not something I can share with an outsider, and they know I'm going to be fine with that. Anybody have anything to add? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe part of the question was how often do we interact with Samish citizens? Yeah, I honestly would love to even more. A couple years back, one of us probably up here would have been a Samish citizen. We worked with this awesome woman named Emma. She's part Samish. She's just like us. She was a diver. She's a mom. She taught me really everything I know. So yeah, I would really like to see her or someone else up here talking to you guys about this. Um, yeah, I think along the way, Samish people uh, or people with Samish lineage choose to work at DNR, and there's a lot of different people across the organization that are Samish citizens. So getting to interact with them, our culture department is largely made up of Samish citizens. Um, but yeah, probably, here and there, all the different touch points of a different government, we talk and learn and all get together. But of course, like I think there's always more to be done.
Samish again is a little bit unique in this aspect that due to some various things that have happened throughout history, Samish does not have a central housing reservation. There's not a central community. There is now a 14-unit elders housing project that we just opened a year ago, and that's sort of we went to cut the ribbon on that, and our tribal chair stood up and said, "This is the first Samish village on Fidalgo Island in 200 years," and my brain melted. But Samish citizens are spread out throughout mostly Western Washington, the 10 counties of Western Washington, but there are lots of citizens in BC with connections. There's citizens all over the world. So we're a little bit unique in that there's not necessarily that central population core that we can draw from. But yeah, we have been, I think Samish DNR over its life has had 4 Samish citizens working for it at one time or another. And when we offer new positions, we're always excited when one chooses to apply. There is Indian preference hiring. So if the person's qualified, there's extra points for being Samish or Native that weigh into that hiring. So it is a goal of the tribe. 20% of the employees we've got 100 employees now, 20% are Samish citizens, and a higher percentage of that are Native. I laugh. My boss, our chief operations officer, is from Metlakatla, Alaska, and after she joined, like lots of her friends started coming down and securing positions. And so I always tease her that someday I'm going to drive into Anacortes and it's just going to say, "Welcome to Metlakatla South." But it is a priority for us to do that. And I agree. Usually all my presentations have this huge disclaimer of, I'm indigenous to Northern England on my dad's side, where they came over on the Mayflower to the Mass Bay Colony. On my mom's side in the 30s, they came over from Sweden. So we can't give you the indigenous perspective here. We can only share the stories that have not only been shared with us, but that we're authorized to share widely. And so I would always echo Elena and always encourage folks to get that true indigenous perspective by speaking to indigenous people. So, yes, you have. Are you talking from just a general perspective or like a dive perspective or? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We cut our teeth on water quality sampling. In fact, our founding director is sitting in the back. I wasn't going to call her out, but she's here in 30 now plus years ago. The first project was water quality sampling for fecal coliform in Samish River. We're now still part of what group called the Clean Samish Initiative, which is trying to deal with the poo in the Samish River. So yeah, it is something we do follow protocols, when we're sampling gloves, whatever's appropriate. So yeah, water pollution, and in Anacortes for 30 years now, we've monitored every stormwater outfall into Fidalgo Bay. We partner with the city of Anacortes, and we started tracing up the hot zones where we were finding a lot of fecal coliform. We have so far found 6 homes that were cross-connected. So every time they flushed, it went into the bay instead of the water treatment plant, right? And we've gotten those repaired. And so that's, the first people we found were like horrified. They built their house in the 70s and they're like, "We've been flushing into the bay our entire life." They were just, and I don't think it was, at first I was like, "Get the regulatory stick out, these people." But we started working with the city, and there's manhole covers that are clearly labeled sewer that are stormwater, and it's like whatever they needed a new cover and that one fit, right? And so, then you have a developer come and say, well, that says sewer, so plug in here, right? And so, became very quickly more, and the city, had funding that they could use. So we helped those people fix those issues. So yeah, I guess for the dive stuff, I'd let you guys talk about. Oh, yeah, we sample a lot in Lake Campbell as well, and we have to suspend sampling when the blue-green algae blooms hit because of the danger there.
Yeah, I'm our current water quality lead for Samish Nation, and we do deal with a lot of pollution. We have seen it go down. Anacortes was basically like ordered at threat of lawsuit to switch over its combined sewage stormwater into separate systems, and so that cross contamination was happening after they made the full switch. Some houses weren't switched over correctly, and people sometimes connect those houses in wrong. And so yeah, we sample all the creeks that outflow through Anacortes every month to see if there's anything in those creeks, and then we do it in sections so we can see in what section of the creek that house is spilling in. For diving, in general, water pollution can be a concern for diving. In the Puget Sound, there's such massive water flow. The reservoir rate of these basins is very, very small in comparison to, say, the open ocean. So we don't generally have to be concerned about it unless it's like a huge first flush. Then maybe we won't dive that day. But by the next day, the tides will have cleared most of that stuff out of the sound.
Collaborate with other organizations like the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They reached out to you.
Yeah, so the question was about do we partner with agencies and stuff. I should have included a slide on the slide deck, or 10, that lists the amount of partners that we have. Our entire department is 10 people, counting me, and they don't let me out of my office very often. So there's like 9 people doing all this work, and so we don't do anything that's not, in a vacuum. It's all with partnerships. And yeah, Fish and Wildlife on Pinto Abalone, State DNR, and various, San Juan Preservation Trust and others on prairie bald work in the San Juans, State DNR on our marine debris cleanup, Padilla Bay on some burning stuff, Anacortes High School Green Club for clam surveys. It's the slide. There's at least 2 slides full of logos. So yeah, we always try and show up at a project or at a table saying, okay, what's needed here? How can we help? And ideally we have some funding to put towards that. So we really try and partner with groups so that we can help fill data gaps and ideally move from gathering data to turning it into information to then turning it into action. Yeah, we'll fight it out between the two of you.
Is that happening on state land, or is there any private property involved? What's happening there?
Yeah, it's a combination of all the above. So some of the projects that we started getting into prescribed burns with are all properties operated by San Juan County Land Bank. And so that's a variety of property that they own themselves, and then other properties that landowners have gone into agreements with, conservation agreements. We have also done work on state lands. So on Cypress Island, we do a lot of work out there, and that's a co-management agreement with the state DNR out there. We have yet to actually burn there, but there are plans to do that in the future. And then as of very recently, we're at the very beginning stages of a new project with a variety of partners, but it's all based on a private landowner's land on South Lopez. And it's a nice big parcel of land, and we're trying to get there. Yeah.
And then just in front of you, Ed, they end up next. Samish DNR is 100% grant funded. So it's a variety of federal and state sources primarily. We are really good as a team at writing grants, and we are a team when we write those grants. A grant doesn't go out the door without at least 3 or 4 set of eyes having comments on it and working through the scoring sheet and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I landed our first 2 climate change resiliency grants during the first Trump administration when you weren't allowed to say the words climate change. So we're pretty good, and I credit a lot of that to the partnerships we have. If you have good projects, strong partners, and strong partners backing the project, you have good grant applications. But yeah, Samish DNR to date has been 100% grant funded.
That's about the end of time, but thank you. I'm sure they'll stay down here and chat with them. You could have some more questions. Thank you.